Hello, and welcome to our presentation, Writing Proficiency Development of Young Adult Spanish Heritage Language Learners at the 13th International Symposium on Bilingualism at the University of Warsaw in July 2021. My name is Sayel Graves, and I'm presenting the work of first author Alberta Gatti and me, both from the Institute for Language Education in Transcultural Context, or ILTEC, at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. The overarching goal of ILTEC is to support the development of literacy in both L2 and heritage language classrooms. We understand literacy as the situated practice of interpreting and creating meaning through texts in all modalities. As such, literacy encompasses cognitive, sociocultural, and linguistic dimensions. In this presentation, we'll explore aspects of the linguistic dimension of literacy by focusing on proficiency development of Spanish heritage language learners in the United States. This presentation describes two ongoing studies intended to gauge writing proficiency development of Spanish heritage language learners who are enrolled in college-level courses for heritage speakers with the ultimate goal of connecting research and practice. The first study, called Writing Proficiency Development of Spanish Heritage Language Learners, or WPDHL, investigates proficiency development after one semester of instruction under a generic curriculum. The second, called Investigating Pedagogies for Advanced Proficiency, or IPAP, is in early stages and it has three components. First is understanding proficiency development under specific pedagogical interventions. Next is establishing the relationship between proficiency in the majority language, in this case English, and the heritage language, which in this case is Spanish, and mapping the syntactic complexity of writing samples at different levels of proficiency. At the end of this talk, we will briefly share early results on the English to Spanish relationship, and we'll also share the design for our forthcoming syntactic complexity analysis. So let's start with the first study, Writing Proficiency Development of Spanish Heritage Language Learners. Increasingly in the United States, universities offer minority language speaking bilinguals heritage courses, specifically designed for their language learning needs. Currently, in the United States in general, and in particular in CUNY, heritage instructors use a vast array of practices and approaches. These targeted heritage curricula have been evolving from traditional bottom-up approaches to more top-down approaches. That is to say that the approaches have been moving from having the goal of bringing heritage language learners' linguistic practices into alignment with the linguistic practices of quote-unquote educated speakers from communities where the heritage language is the majority language, let's say a quote-unquote standard from a home country, shifting that over to using an approach that is informed by an understanding of language varieties. And finally, this study is motivated by the fact that research-based information on the efficacy of different practices in supporting heritage proficiency development is scarce. And yet this research-based information is essential and it should be used to inform the field of heritage language education. So for the WPDHL study, we had two research questions. First, we wanted to investigate to what degree heritage learners' writing proficiency changed, if at all, after one semester of instruction. And we'll see that results suggest that yes, learners can move up in proficiency, but not many do so. Second, we wanted to test a hypothesis that predicted that lower level proficiency learners would be more likely to show changes in proficiency. And here as well, as is anecdotally expected, results indicate that this is the case. Previous research using the actful proficiency descriptors has described some of the following: oral and writing proficiency profiles of heritage learners, the relationship between biographical profile and proficiency ratings of heritage learners, the relationship between oral and writing proficiency of Spanish heritage learners, and the relationship between hours of instruction and achievement of specific levels of proficiency for L2 learners. But no one to date has combined these to investigate this relationship between hours of instruction and achievement of certain levels of proficiency in the case of heritage learners. And we know that heritage learners have particular proficiency profiles and very different initial states from L2 learners. For the WPDHL study, we used an instrument that we developed in-house and named the Writing Proficiency Assessment, or WPA, and it's modeled after the Actual Writing Proficiency Test, or WPT. The instrument has 4 prompts allowing for ratings from novice high to superior, and we administered the WPA twice, in weeks 2 and 12 of a 1-semester course, in order to investigate whether proficiency went up. Finally, each WPA was double rated, as is the case with the official WPT, by certified actual WPT raters. In cases of rating discrepancy, the raters met to conduct a norming session and reach consensus. The study subjects were enrolled in one of 4 courses for Spanish heritage learners offered at Lehman College at CUNY. Lehman is an institution that serves a student population that is 52.5% of Hispanic origin. Lehman also has a Spanish heritage language track with approximately 350 students per semester. And they take the following sequence of courses: an SPA 113 and then a 114. And in the following year, they take a 203 and a 204. The total hours of instruction for 1 semester is 42. And the curriculum varied from instructor to instructor. While in some cases there was a specific emphasis on critical language awareness, there was no particular approach to development of writing itself. The study enrolled 134 participants, which was 81 in the first semester, and then 53 more in the subsequent semester. They ranged in age from 18 to 44, and the participants were identified as heritage learners after they completed a biographical placement questionnaire. The participants had also been placed in one of 4 levels of instruction, and that's the first to 4th semester courses mentioned in the previous slide. And they were placed that way using a placement tool developed by professors at Lehman College. It is important to notice that this placement instrument was not aligned with principles of proficiency. And one way to illustrate this fact is by examining the breakdown of a sample of 2 groups of students, one placed in the 2nd semester class level and one placed in the 3rd semester class level. So these are students whose proficiency we established via the WPA that we administered, and this was after they had been placed at these levels. So the table on the left shows the 2nd semester class level, which is the SPA 114. And it displays a range of proficiency from intermediate low, and that's 4 learners, all the way up to advanced mid, also 4 of those learners, and a variety of totals of every sublevel in between, for the total of 25 students enrolled in that section. The table on the right shows, again, the actual proficiency levels of learners placed in the next level up, which is SPA 203, and this was in that same semester. These learners range from intermediate mid, which is 3 of them, up to advanced mid, and again, a variety of learners at every sublevel in between. Now we'll present the results of proficiency levels at the start and end of the 1 semester. Out of the 134 subjects total, 10% surprisingly showed a decrease of 1 sublevel of proficiency, but 93, which is 69% of the total, stayed at the same level of writing proficiency, which is not unexpected. And then a total of 28 subjects increased their proficiency in Spanish writing by 1 sublevel. That was 21% of all subjects assessed. In order to uncover clear and meaningful patterns in these results, we carried out several levels of further analysis. It's important to make sure that subgroups are large enough to show whether patterns are statistically significant or not. So first, grouping the subjects by their initial departmental placement level showed no patterns or trends, which is not surprising considering how varied in proficiency the class levels were, which we saw in the previous few slides. So we next grouped subjects by actual proficiency levels at the start of the semester, making sure to group sublevels that can perform the same functions. So intermediate low and intermediate mid became the lowest group, intermediate high and advanced low became a mid-level group, and then advanced mid was combined with advanced high, and that became the highest proficiency group. We further combined those who showed a decrease along with those who showed no change. In other words, we combined those with no change in proficiency with all of those learners who moved one sublevel down. So for the results of this study, starting with the lowest group, which was the intermediate low and intermediate mid writers, we found that 41% or 21 subjects went up in proficiency. Of the middle group, which is the intermediate high and advanced low writers, only 16% or 13 subjects went up. And then in the highest group, the advanced mid and advanced high writers, none showed an increase in proficiency. And this illustrates a commonly believed but less often proven trend, which is the lower the proficiency, the greater the likelihood of improvement in a certain time, which you can see by comparing the 41% to the 16% to the 0 in the most advanced proficiency learners. In order to analyze these results for significance, a Fisher's exact test was performed, and the relationship between these variables was significant, as indicated by a p-value of 0.01. Furthermore, the effect size, Kramer's V, was 0.27, which is on the low end of moderate. And this suggests that the lower the starting level, the more likely the rating is to go up. As we mentioned earlier, while not unexpected, this finding has not yet been demonstrated in the literature for heritage language learners in particular. So why do heritage learners advance this way? The actual proficiency guidelines predict that as learners move up the proficiency scale, development is not linear. There's a need to acquire not just the ability to control a wider array of linguistic structures, but also to do so with a greater level of accuracy, and that's all in order to communicate in a wider spectrum of contexts about a greater variety of content types. That's why the image associated with this particular proficiency scale is an inverted pyramid expanding vertically and horizontally with each increasing level of proficiency. And this prediction seems to be affirmed by the findings of our study. Now we'll switch over to introduce Investigating Pedagogies for Advanced Proficiency, the second study that has stemmed from the first Writing Proficiency Development in Heritage Learners study. The first research question that we had was, does a curriculum specifically designed to promote literacy development affect proficiency gains after one semester of instruction? And the second question we had was, what is the relationship between writing proficiency in Spanish and in English, the heritage and majority languages? The first question investigates whether a curriculum designed to promote literacy development via a targeted genre-based pedagogy has any role in proficiency development. Genre-based pedagogy and writing development is something that has been studied with great success on L2 learners at Georgetown and Emory. And so we assessed learners in a genre-based curriculum, and we also assessed learners in a control group. Preliminary results from a very small pilot study don't seem to indicate that a targeted curriculum is more effective than a generic one when it comes to proficiency progress. But it was a very small sample, and this new genre-based curriculum does need some adjustments, and then we'll be repeating this experiment. The second piece of this puzzle investigates the relationship between writing proficiency in the minority and majority languages. So we know that typical definitions of heritage learners include lower writing proficiency in the heritage language. But what in fact is the gap between the two languages? And is this gap different depending on educational backgrounds, such as where they went to school in the United States, for example? Results of an extremely small sample, only 6, suggest that heritage learners do indeed write better in English than in Spanish, in some cases by several sublevels, which might indicate limitations in what can be transferred. But more samples and a detailed analysis of the data will be needed in order to know more. Our next step after that will be to examine grammatical complexity in the Spanish writing of the heritage learners. One key element of this study is that subjects will be grouped again by proficiency in order to compare apples to apples, something often left out of existing research on heritage language complexity. In other words, many researchers rather group all heritage learners together. Another important component of the design is that the data we'll be analyzing is writing samples, and those are spontaneous data, which is very advantageous over grammaticality judgments for heritage language learners because they acquire the vast majority of their heritage language at home, not in school, and not learning rules. For this analysis, we will code for the following elements: complexity, which is total T units, fluency, lexical development, and error rates. Here are the references that we cited in this presentation. You're welcome to pause the video if you'd like to take a closer look at them. And in conclusion, we thank you very much for your interest. If you would like any more information, you are welcome to contact us at the email addresses below.